Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to share with you our learning outcomes of individual study to you. Our group members are Violet, Weijia, Summer, and Dan. Our topic today is the Whitewashed History. Western celebrations are masked in colonialism and treachery. Here is the overview. The content is divided into 5 parts. After introduction, my partner will introduce 3 popular celebrations to you, and then I will conclude the whole presentation. We want to talk about the Western holidays because we found that the recount of celebration is glorified much of the backstory and survivally whitewash the experience of Native American. We believe that if we choose to celebrate a holiday, we should seek to understand the history of it before. First, let's look at a short video. The Native American girls describe the real history behind Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, America. I'm Donna, and I'm here with my friends to tell you the real history behind this holiday. Growing up, I knew that what they told you in school about Thanksgiving wasn't true. That's not the true story. The true story behind Thanksgiving was, after every killing of a whole village, these European settlers celebrated it, and they called it Thanksgiving. But it wasn't until Abraham Lincoln became president that it became an official holiday.
He ordered 38 Dakota men to be hung for war crimes.
After the sacred holiday Christmas.
We take this time to remember our elders who lost their lives due to what really happened. Usually my mom makes a Native American dish for us and we pray.
Growing up, I would be kind of annoyed that they didn't know what actually happened on Thanksgiving and that they're actually celebrating the deaths of many people and many tribes that were lost.
Whether it's to give thanks or to be with your family, you should learn how the holiday was established in the first place.
I'm thankful for being born indigenous to this continent.
I'm thankful that I still have my culture.
I'm thankful that my elders kept our culture alive all these years.
I'm thankful to be indigenous, resilient, and alive.
I'm thankful for us all to be able to stand together, stand strong, and stand as one.
Happy Thanksgiving, America.
Well, in this video, the girls calmly tell the truth to us and overturn the Thanksgiving table, which also means they want to reverse the white-dominated history. Admittedly, the erasure of history is institutionalized whitewashing. Next, we would reveal the truth about these holidays and take you to revisit the history of racism.
I will introduce Thanksgiving to you. Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday in the United States. Today, the Thanksgiving celebration seems to center on cooking and sharing a bountiful meal with family and friends. Turkey, a Thanksgiving staple, has become all but synonymous with the holiday. Besides, volunteering, parades, and presidential pardon for Turkey have been seen as common Thanksgiving Day activities. However, behind the holiday, the traditional narrative of Thanksgiving Day paints a deceptively sunny portrait of relations between the colonizers and the tribes, masking the long and bloody history of the rape and murder that was committed against this continent's first peoples, men, women, and children, resulting in the genocide and the continued suffering from the Native Americans. It's necessary to break the fairy tale historical narrative to find and reflect on the historical truth behind Thanksgiving. It was the Wampanoag in 1621 who helped the first wave of Puritans arriving on shores, showing them how to plant crops, forage for wild foods, and survive. The first official mention of a Thanksgiving celebration occurs in 1637, after the colonists brutally massacred an entire Pequot village, then subsequently celebrate their barbaric victory. Years later, President Washington first tried to start a holiday of Thanksgiving in 1789, but this has nothing to do with Indians and settlers. Instead, it's intended to be a public day of thanksgiving and prayer. It wasn't until the writer Sarah Joseph Hale persuaded President Lincoln that the Thanksgiving holiday was needed and could help heal the divided nation that it was made official in 1863. But the inspiration for that was far more exclusionist rather than reflection. The very term Thanksgiving is full of disgrace. In fact, Thanksgiving Day is a reminder of the genocide of millions of Native people, the theft of native lands, and the relentless assault on Native culture. The Thanksgiving myth has done so much damage and harm to the cultural self-esteem of generations of indigenous people, especially for children who are still receiving the wrong education. Towards Thanksgiving Day, there is a need that people to learn about the real history and reflect on it.
Next, I will introduce the Independence Day of the United States. Independence Day is one of the major legal holidays in the United States, commemorating July 4, 1776, when the Declaration of Independence was adopted. And every year, Independence Day is celebrated with great celebrations and pageants. Indeed, while many in the United States may associate the virtues of justice, equality, liberty, and prosperity with notions of independence and celebrations of it, for indigenous people, they instead represent a distinctly Euro-American brand of chauvinism, a symbol of white supremacy. Independence Day celebrations whitewash the undesirable factors of history, ignoring the involvement of key revolutionaries in the pursuit of civilizing the indigenous people, a race that the Declaration of Independence refers to as merciless Indian savages. This is an unjust act. Independence Day and the commemorations of it place the whiteness at the fore of historical commemoration, whilst simultaneously oppressing the legacy of hateful efforts to normalize Native American culture, which defined their experience of the road to independence. For 4th of July to move beyond its current whitewashed state, the United States must make a greater effort to draw attention to this radical historical narrative, instead of placing stories of glory and justice front and center in all commemorations. Its leaders could do better by taking responsibility for a past defined by oppression, realities so at odds with the American values of liberty and equality. Real change could be made. Exhibitions, speeches, and events would provide an ideal basis to begin this long overdue process of coming to terms with history. In a recent interview, the director of United Native American remarked how every inch of this land that we are on here in North America is actually stained with Indian blood. It is about time that the U.S. acknowledged this past that, whilst uncomfortable, is no less important or worthy of recognition.
Now I'm going to talk about Columbus Day, or what we should call Indigenous Peoples Day. Columbus Day is an American holiday commemorating Christopher Columbus' landing in the Americas in 1492. It was unofficially celebrated in many cities and states as early as the 18th century, but didn't become a federal holiday until 1937. But throughout its history, Columbus Day and the people who inspired it have generated controversy. Since the 1970s, a number of alternative holidays have been proposed, including Indigenous Peoples Day, which is now celebrated in many U.S. states and cities. Controversy over Columbus Day dates back to the 19th century, when anti-immigrant groups in the United States rejected the holiday because of its association with Catholicism. In recent decades, Native Americans and other groups have protested and celebrated events that led to the colonization of the Americas. The start of the transatlantic slave trade and millions of deaths from the murder and disease. Christopher Columbus's image as a brave hero was also questioned. After arriving in the Bahamas, the explorer and his men forced the indigenous people they found there into slavery. Later, while serving as the governor of the Hispaniola, he allegedly carried out brutal punishments, including torture. Columbus Day is more than just a holiday. It represents the violent history of colonization in the Western Hemisphere. Columbus Festival's status and other amendments purify his actions, including the enslavement of Native Americans, while praising him for discovering a place already inhabited. Today, dozens of cities, several universities, and a growing number of states have adopted Indigenous Peoples Day, a holiday that celebrates the history and the contributions of Native Americans. It is a good thing that more and more people are paying attention to the sufferings of the indigenous people.
Let's move on to the conclusion. There are many colonial methodologies in this holiday, but false beliefs are rooted in institutionalized racism in American history. In the true story, it is concerned that Thanksgiving is erasing the struggles of indigenous people by adopting a story of culture coming together. Independence Day as a celebration of freedom for a few and domination over a majority, including indigenous people. And Columbus Day is a commemoration of a genocidal villain. So our outlooks would be drawn. Glorifying and whitewashing history will not solve anything. Before the celebration, people should open the door to heal the country's roots and recognize the true history. Although it is violent, dark, and cruel, this healing process needs to the joint effort of all people, including the oppressor, the oppressed, and even bystanders. People must acknowledge the country's true history, thereby awakening a sense of responsibility to correct it and reconstruct the social idea about indigenous people rather than avoiding with the truth. Finally, to empower indigenous people, everyone has the responsibility in this long journey. The power, the privilege, and policy need to be changed to break the unequal and harmful situation. We are glad to see indigenous communities are making headways in this long journey, and we can hear their voice, such as decolonizing Columbus Day by replacing it with Indigenous Peoples Day. Generation of American value has made up their methodology of holidays, but we're convinced that change can occur as individuals awaken to the reality that they are celebrating a whitewashing history and begin to tell the truth, to heal the roots and achieving reconciliation. We sincerely hope to see a better future where indigenous people's rights are respected and they could have freedom and independence equally. That's all for our presentation. Thank you for your listening.